Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a dominant meta climbing team in the Open Ultra League that I've had some truly terrific results with. The team is centered around Shadow Feraligatr. Shadow Feraligatr is just absurdly flexible in the current Open Ultra League meta. Shadow Claw, Hydro Cannon, and Ice Beam, it's rare you'll find a matchup where you're not able to hit for at least neutral. On the lead, I have the ever-trusty Shadow Dragonite, and as the save switch, Registeel, because a lot of teams are just disrespecting Registeel as a Pokemon. So, 1 or 2 times per set, you can often just get a free win by having a Registeel. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out the team in action. Hopping into the first match, leading Shadow Dragonite versus Skeleturge. This is a pretty nice lead for the Dragonite. Dragon Claw does not knock out here. Opponent, however, is going to use an early shield. They will go for the Disarming Voice. I'm going to shield, throw 4 Dragon Breaths, and then go for a Dragon Claw number 2. This Dragon Claw does not quite KO, but my plan here is they have to throw instantly, so I can just switch into the Registeel. Even if they predict it and go for a Shadow Ball, it's very okay by me. They went for the Disarming Voice, so we're able to get a very nice catch. Opponent sends in a Shadow Feraligatr to the Registeel save switch, and this is a pretty massive surprise, as this is not an amazing matchup for Feraligatr. Feraligatr in the 2 shield can do extremely well here, but in the 1s, the matchup is a lot less clear. I go for the Zap Cannon. The Zap Cannon is shielded, and I do get the attack drop. I don't have a particularly good IV Registeel in the Ultra League. It is the rank 1 out of raid IVs, but you can get significantly better ones by trading. So I'm not going to have nearly the bulk of some of these traded Registeels, but as you're going to see, it's still going to put in a tremendous amount of work. They do win charge attack priority, but I'm very okay with that because I can survive it, get the Zap Cannon, and in the back, they have Tapu Fini, and I'm going to be able to send in Shadow Feraligatr. This is a matchup where Shadow Feraligatr's energy is completely walled. However, it doesn't really matter because even with purely resisted charge attacks, Shadow Feraligatr is still able to absolutely thrash Tapu Fini. I just have to overfarm, watch for the catch, they don't get the catch, and now, just with purely resisted charge moves, as you can see, Tapu Fini just gets absolutely cooked by Feraligatr. Feraligatr unleashing Hydro after Hydro after Hydro, knocking out the Tapu Fini and taking the win. We move to the next match and we see a tricky lead Shadow Dragonite versus Registeel. In the Ultra League, Registeel can tank a superpower, but a lot of my opponents had been shielded in the first move, so I'm just going to go for the bait. Dragon Claw bait to the Registeel, gets no shielded on charge attack priority, and that is a painful start to the match. I can survive a Zap Cannon, but not super well. I do get debuffed, which means that my superpower will not be enough to knock out. I'm going to go for the superpower, save the Dragonite for later, and send in Registeel. I'm not able to lock on down after this, so I'm expecting my opponent just to stay in and force me to throw energy, but interestingly enough, they send in Talonflame. In my view, this is a pretty large misplay by my opponent, because by staying in with the Registeel, they could have forced my energy, and I would have been in a spot where I couldn't exit with as much energy as I had. Whereas now, when they try for the farm down, I actually live it on 1 HP, make it to another Zap Cannon, and get them to 1 HP themselves. Unfortunately, the Dragon Breath does not KO, but they're running Brave Bird, and you cannot hold a Brave Bird and a Flame Charge at the same time. If they're running Brave Bird Fly, they can, but it looks like they weren't, so I don't actually have to commit a shield with the Feraligatr. And in the back, it's going to be a Cresselia, so this game is just over. Their Registeel is low enough to the point where I should just be able to fully farm it down, and they're going to fire off Grass Knots. I can survive a Grass Knot, but at this point, Grass Knot is realistically the only move that can do any damage, because when they send in the Registeel, I can just farm it all the way down. They can bring back in the Cresselia, but at this point, there is no way for my opponent to win the game. I'll go for the Hydro Cannon, they will shield it, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Decent lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite versus Talonflame. As the Talonflame, they should always play out the Zero Shield here because they can live the 14 Dragon Breaths and the Dragon Claw, whereas I can definitely not live a Brave Bird. So they're going to be able to generate a shield advantage out of this lead matchup because Dragonite is often very useful, so I am going to commit the shield. They go for the Fly, their save switch is Poliwrath, and here I'm just going to farm up, go for the Dragon Claw right before the Icy Wind, and then after they shield, I can just send in Registeel. So I go for the Dragon Claw, but here my opponent honestly makes, in my view, a brilliant read. They no-shield the Poliwrath, and that's a big problem. It a little bit stun locks me, so I will commit the shield. I realize I can't farm down to the debuff. I fire off energy because I don't really want to switch lock myself, but now I've used all my energy, I'm down 2 shields, and it's an Annihilate in the back, and I have played this so poorly, oh my goodness. I'm forced to send in the Registeel, because Registeel can at least survive a Shadow Ball. I am going to be firing off this Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon will inflict some nice damage. Opponent has yet to use a shield in the match, so they will use one here. They send in the Talonflame. Looks like the Talonflame did get the one-turn switch, so I'm able to outpace by one singular turn, making it to the Focus Blast. They're going to let that through. They're trying to sweep with the Annihilate, and Annihilate is going to exit with energy and with the shield still intact. The nice thing is my Shadow Claws will add up, and I can survive a Shadow Ball. I do see a potential win con. I'm going to bank the move, switch into the Dragonite, and this is really close to Dragon Claw range. If they shield, it's going to come down to charge attack priority, which is IV dependent here, and my Feraligatr wins it. The little bit of attack I have on the Feraligatr comes in clutch. Hydro Cannon knocks out. Honestly, I played that game terribly, but thanks to running a strong team, I was able to overcome my misplays. Moving to the next match, Shadow Dragonite versus Feraligatr, and this lead is a lot worse for Dragonite than people might expect. Even a Hydro Cannon being resisted still does a ton of damage. I will shield up, they bait with the Hydro. A Dragon Claw won't quite knock out the regular Feraligatr from here, so I will fire off the Superpower to guarantee the KO. This means I will have to switch out. They send in Steelix, I pivot to the Registeel, and they bring out Annihilate. If I knew the backline at the time, which obviously I didn't, I would have pivoted the Feraligatr, but this still works. Zap Cannon does a lot. They commit the shield, and they get debuffed. It is a 66% chance of getting the debuff, so more often than not, the Zap Cannon should get the debuff. And this debuff is very valuable. It means that I can survive the Shadow Ball, make it to another Zap Cannon, and while this will not knock out, it will do substantial damage. They double shield, they get double debuffed as well. Their energy not going to do a whole lot. I send in the Dragonite, they're forced to Shadow Ball here, because the Night Slash double debuff will do nothing. The Shadow Ball will still pick up the KO. In comes Feraligatr. They're going to bank a Shadow Ball, send in the Steelix, and I should have a pretty decent path to victory. I fire off the Hydro, that does so much damage. My opponent does not have enough energy for an Earthquake, so I have no reason to respect this. They will go for the Psychic Fangs. I can farm up, go for the Hydro. Right before they're able to make their next Psychic Fangs, they bank to Shadow Ball, so they're 2 off the back-to-back Night Slash, and I'm now 2 off the Hydro Cannon. In this matchup, they have a higher attack Annihilate, so they win charge attack priority over the Feraligatr, but since I overfarmed properly, I'm able to CMP tie them here, so they will not get their second Night Slash, and the Hydro Cannon will be able to pick up the KO. I'm looking for the 5-0 set, and I'm met with an Annihilate lead. This is pretty okay for Dragonite. I will fire off the Dragon Claw right before they make it to a Shadow Ball. This trainer was actually a trainer who I queued into as my first battle of the day, and unfortunately, the game completely froze out on me. My guess is it froze out for them as well, so we were both given a loss, but I get an opportunity to get a rematch later in the day, and I'm not going to let that go to waste. Dragon Claw and Night Slash exchanged. They send in Feraligatr. I'm able to force a shield, and now I bring in my own Feraligatr. The reason why is their energy is not going to be particularly valuable here. They're just not in a range where Hydro Cannon will KO, so I'm not going to throw my Hydro just yet. Rather, I'm going to shield and then look to overfarm. This way, I'm not throwing my energy until it knocks out, and I can overfarm as much as possible, so I exit with quite a lot of energy. They're going to send in Tentacruel, and I should be in a pretty decent position now. I can fire off Hydro Cannons. I mean, they're going to do basically nothing to the Tentacruel. Well, in theory. But, as you're going to see, 2 Hydros plus some Shadow Claws, and the Tentacruel is already at, like, only 33% health. I'm going to send in the Registeel, but the issue is they still have the Annihilate. So they're going to Scald, they send in the Annihilate, I send in the Dragonite, they're able to farm me down, and here's where Lock-On only doing 1 damage is a bit unfortunate, because I'm like, yo, surely I can farm down the Annihilate. Nope, the Annihilate refuses to get KO'd without making another Night Slash. But the nice thing here is they did not boost on the first Night Slash. If they did, that could have put me in a range where a Scald would KO after they landed the boosted Night Slash, but I'm not in Scald range. They realize they don't have a win con, they let it through, and we get the 5-0 set. Moving to the next match, Shadow Dragonite versus Shadow Gliscor. And unfortunately, my game is stuttering quite a bit there, but it doesn't look like I lost any turns. They go for the Night Slash. Thankfully, no Night Slash boost here, and I'm going to return fire with the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be very threatening Shadow versus Shadow. They will commit the shield. I know that I can win the ones here, so I am going to commit the shield, and then I'm going to be firing off the Dragon Claw when I get it. If they want switch, they're going to have to give up both their shields, which means Registeel is very threatening for them in the back, because Registeel down shields is very powerful. They send in Feeny, I send in Registeel, but disaster strikes. It's Virizion in the back, and Virizion these days are never on Stone Edge. They're always on Leaf Blade Sacred Sword, and Leaf Blade just does too much damage here. I'm going to build up to the Ice Beam and bait with the Hydro, but unfortunately, my Feraligatr is just not going to be able to survive the double kicks here. Maybe if I had like the rank 1 Shadow Feraligatr, I could have made the Ice Beam, but I don't have that. I'm only able to make the Hydro. They're just going to be able to get to too many charge attacks here with this Virizion. Virizion will fire off the Sacred Sword. They're already at another one as well. Yeah, this is just unfortunately looking like a loss. Virizion in the back is very difficult. If you're able to get the opponent's shields down, then you're in a pretty okay position. I will go for the Zap Cannon. I have to full charge it and attempt to lock on Farm Down. But my opponent is going to make an incredibly good play here. Surfing is a mistake. Nature's Madnessing is a guaranteed win con, because now their water guns just do way too much damage. I'm not going to be able to farm down, so my only choice is to resign the match. We've got the Mirror Lead Shadow Dragonite for Shadow Dragonite. There's a lot of different ways to play it. I like just clicking the Dragon Claw immediately and playing to charge attack priority. A lot of people run very high rank Shadow Dragonites. I do think that if you have a Shadow Dragonite, having a little bit of attack on it can be nice, specifically for winning the mirror. Because oftentimes, if you're able to get alignment, it's very valuable. Like a Skeledirge in the back on Registeel is awful, but on Feraligatr, I'm in a tremendous spot. So winning switch advantage there is absolutely massive. They bait with the Disarming Voice, they stay in, so I'm going to be able to grab the shield back with the Hydro Cannon. The Hydro Cannon will grab the shield. I mean, these Shadow Claws, they just shred through the poor Skeledirge. My goodness. I'm double shielding here. They full send the Shadow Ball, so they should look to switch. It's Tapu Fini in the back, and now I'm going to bank a ton of energy, but also, as you may notice, get a bunch of Shadow Claws as well. A Zap Cannon does right around 2/3 to a Tapu Fini, so this does put it into Zap Cannon range for me. However, I would much rather actually go for a slight undercharge on the Zap Cannon and exit with some energy. So I'm going to farm just shy of 100, and I'm going to miss a couple bubbles here, and watch this. We do get a nice farm down with the Registeel. This means that I'm comfortably going to be able to outpace the Skeledirge, and if they shield, I can just switch into the Feraligatr and combo. My clock comes up in the middle of their Incinerate, so I will get the snipe. Hydro Cannon, massive overkill at this point, knocking out the Skeledirge, and I'm able to take that win. We have an amazing lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite versus Greedent. Greedent, that's one thing I do really like about this team, is both Dragonite and Registeel do extremely well there. Greedent on the lead, I oftentimes will go for a Dragon Claw bait when I make it to the superpower. I like throwing before they make double body slam, because if they land 2 body slams, you get low enough that they could potentially snipe you. I had an opponent make a really nice play against me. I can't remember who it was. Granted, this was some weeks back where they landed 2 body slams, they sniped me with a Dragon Breath Tina, and I lost all the energy. So it was a very valuable learning experience for me. Here, they actually double shield on lead, and them double shielding on lead means that this should, I should be in an incredibly good position. I can send in the Registeel. The fact that they're not immediately pivoting tells me that they do not have 2 strong checks to Registeel in the back, because if they did, they would be bringing them in. They would not want this energy to be wasted here. They do crunch debuff me 2 times, as a matter of fact, so they actually get some value out of the energy thanks to those 2 crunch debuffs, but I can pick up the KO. It's Giratina in the back, I send in Gator, and it's Mandibuzz. So honestly, they didn't even have a backline that was too scared of Shadow Dragonite. And now, 2 Shield Shadow Feraligatr is just going to absolutely crush everything on their team, as I'm going to be able to pick up a double knockout here with 2 Ice Beams, and then still have a ton of Feraligatr left to be able to crush the Giratina. I shield up the Aerial Ace, and now the Dark Pulse. Opponent realizes there's just no winning the game, so they will resign the match. We've got a tough matchup on the lead, Shadow Dragonite versus Zygarde. Typically, a Zygarde on the lead is going to mean that my Registeel is very good in back. The most common team that I've seen with this is Zygarde with Tentacruel and Shadow Feraligatr. Opponent is going to shield up the Dragon Claw, and the unfortunate thing is they actually get a full farm down there, which is brutal. I send in Feraligatr. Zygardes in the Master League love to crunch, so I'm going to call it. It is the Earthquake that does a ton of damage, and unfortunately, Zygarde has functionally KO'd 2 of my Pokemon from the start. But I'm trusting in Registeel. Are they going to be sending in a Tentacruel? No, they send in Feraligatr, and I'm going to switch into the Registeel. Registeel, I'm going to be shielding and going for the Zap Cannon. Again, it's far more likely than not to get the Zap Cannon debuff, so I'm going to fire off the Zap Cannon. Let's see if we can't reduce the damage output from this Feraligatr, and we don't get the debuff. That is a bit unfortunate, as now this means that they're going to guaranteed land a Hydro Cannon at full power. So I may as well no shield here. They're going to be able to grab the shield, and if it's Tentacruel in the back, honestly, I still don't think that I can win, because a Zap Cannon won't one-shot, and it's Jellicent in the back. And unfortunately, I'm just not seeing a path forward. They're very, very weak to Registeel in the back, but I just can't get to enough charge moves. I send in Feraligatr, hoping they miscount and let me get to the Hydro, but they do not. They fire off the Shadow Ball. At this point, I have no way of winning this game. My only hope, I mean, honestly, I don't have a hope. I just go for a Focus Blast. It doesn't KO, and I resign the match. But even if it does, I just get outpaced by the Feraligatr. Hopping into the final match, Shadow Dragonite versus a regular Dragonite again. Just going for the Dragon Claw right away. And for the second time, I win charge stack priority. So people running some high-ranked Dragonites out here. They shield, they want switch advantage. So I say, you know what? I want switch advantage as well. And this will be a true test of Dragonite IVs here. And I actually get that farm down. I was a bit surprised, but hey, we're very okay with that, as I'm able to win switch advantage. And unfortunately, I do think in a lot of those mirror situations, sometimes it can come down to connection. I send in Feraligatr, I shield the Brave Bird, and in the back, that's a Venusaur. That is not a Pokemon I've seen in the Open Ultra League in quite some time, but here it is, not far off leaderboard elo. I'm going to bank some energy on my Feraligatr and then send in the Registeel, because I know Registeel is a complete wall to energy from Venusaur. They're forced to spam out these Frenzy Plants, and Frenzy Plant is really not going to do a lot for it. What I am going to have to be careful of, since our switch clocks are misaligned, is a potential for a Talonflame switch-in. So I will be firing off the Zap Cannon. Their clock isn't up yet, but I'm just going to keep farming. Even if they go over 100, that's fine. I just need to have energy for when they send in the Talonflame, and there it is. So the Talonflame will immediately be knocked out by the Zap Cannon. They're going to send back in the Venusaur. They throw energy, and now is my time to strike. I'm 2 off the Hydro. So I switch into Feraligatr, winning charge attack priority with the Hydro Cannon. It's resisted, but Shadow Feraligatr does not care. This thing is a true Swiss Army knife in the Open Ultra League, and we're able to take the win. All in all, this team has been really consistent for me across the season. Oftentimes, I'll be switching up teams quite a bit, but anytime I try something and it goes terribly, if the Open Ultra League is available, this is usually the team that I go to just to say, you know what? I'm trying to get some elo back, so let's just run this, and it's been very consistent. I've streamed with it a couple times, and I think out of like the 12 or so sets that I've streamed, I think I've had 10 positive sets out of it. Like, granted, a lot of those are like 3-2s, but hey, 3-2, still better than losing elo, so I will definitely take it. I think that realistically, if you don't have a Registeel, there are a couple other options that you could potentially run in its place. You could run something like a Shadow Drapion or a Greedent. I think Registeel is the better of those options, so if you have the Registeel, it is worth running, just because a lot of teams are just disrespecting Registeel as a Pokemon. So as I mentioned at the start, as we saw, there were some games where teams were just double or even triple weak to Registeel, so you can win probably a game or two per set just purely off the fact that you have a Registeel and people are unprepared for it. But yeah, it's a team that if you're looking to gain elo, I think is a really, really good one. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.